Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the undergraduate research program and specifically for the main department. We're going to cover both URP for pay and for credit today. So this is our agenda for today's webinar. So we'll go through each of these slides. We'll go through some information. We'll cover your timeline for URP. And this is being recorded in the fall of 2023. And I'm using some of the forms as examples that are for the semester of spring 2024. So if you're watching this later on, just keep that in mind. Things sometimes change. The last URP webinar that I did is outdated now, so I will be taking that down as soon as this one is successfully recorded and uploaded. So first, just an introduction. I am Kate Stockton, and I'm an advisor in the Main department. Main stands for Mechanical, Aerospace, and Aeronautical. And nuclear engineering. And I work with sophomores, juniors, and seniors after students leave the advising hub for the first year. I am not a primary advisor for any Main student, with very few exceptions, but I am the secondary advisor, meaning I can't clear SAM holds, and students should always speak to their faculty or their primary advisors first, and then I can support students and faculty advisors as needed. I offer senior meetings for seniors and for second semester juniors planning their senior year, just to make sure everything is good, that they have a solid plan for their last couple semesters. And I am the department liaison for Arch Student Success, CCPD, and the registrar's office, among some other offices as well. And I'm also the department coordinator for URP for credit. Sue Miller is our URP coordinator for pay. So if you are going to be doing URP for pay, I am going to cover that process, but you're going to want to make sure you submit all your forms to Sue Miller. All right, so let's go through some information on preparing for your URP and the timeline. So academic departments and the Office of Undergraduate Education are responsible for the paperwork and the coordination of URP. Students that are interested in doing research at the undergraduate level have a couple different ways that they can do research, and I'm going to go through those options beyond URP at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. But definitely students that are full-time undergraduates can pursue research for academic credit or as paid research assistants. And students cannot participate as volunteers. This is because students need to have a legal reason to be working in our labs, even labs that are not experimental. So we want to make sure students are either getting paid to be in those labs or getting credit. So your timeline, you always want to make sure you're planning a semester ahead. So students that are seeing this now, as this is being recorded in the fall of 2023, this is the perfect time if you're going to be here on campus in the spring to be planning for a spring URP or possibly a summer URP. At this point of the fall semester, we would not want to see students applying for fall URPs, mostly because you're getting a grade. Now, this may be a little bit different for pay, but for credit, you're getting a grade based on the whole semester. So as the semester progresses, and if students hand in their forms a little bit later, we do need to make sure students are factoring in those lost weeks from the beginning of the semester back into the rest of the semester. So on average, you want to plan for about 3 credits per week per credit. And as you increase in credits, you need more hours per week. And then if you missed out on the first, let's say 3, 4, 5 weeks because you're turning your forms in late, then you need to factor in all of those weeks and hours of lost credit into the rest of your semester. So it does add up quickly. So keep that in mind. So once you've identified who you want to work with, then that should be done before you start your URP, obviously. You're going to meet with that faculty. You might need to reach out to them, tell them that you're interested in the type of research they do, tell them what you're interested in learning about. And once you have a faculty who's willing to work with you, you're going to sit down, you're going to finalize the project details, and you're going to do the URP forms. And we're going to show what those forms look like a little bit later. That should be done leading up to the semester beginning, or sometimes during the first week of the semester. And as you're doing that paperwork, you're going to be working with that faculty on what each section needs to have in it. And once you're done with that paperwork, at least in the main department, you're going to submit everything to the main undergraduate student services office. This is the office that's right across the elevators on the second floor. You do not get the department head signature ahead of time. We will get that for you. So you want to make sure you're following all of those steps very carefully. If you're doing it for pay, you're going to want to make sure you're talking to Sue Miller, you're getting all of your employment paperwork in. If it's your first job on campus, then you'll have a couple extra steps. If you've done on-campus work before, then it might be a little bit quicker of a process. And you're going to want to make sure once you have your paperwork in, we usually submit everything the first week of the end of the first week of the first semester, the first week of that semester. And anything that's come in ahead of time, we usually don't submit that far in advance. So we will hold on to it, get the signature, and submit it that first week. And then the second week is usually when those forms are due. So we will get anything that's come in over the second week, get that signed and submitted before the add deadline. Anything that happens to be submitted to our office after the date that we ask for it, which is usually a couple days before the deadline, that may be sent to ALAC instead of the registrar's office for their late approval. So just keep in mind the timeline is pretty short while we're doing the paperwork. So you do want to pay attention to those deadlines. And our deadline to our office is, like I said, a few days earlier than the actual add deadline. Once everything's been submitted and you know that everything is good and you've gotten an email that we submitted it, then you're going to want to check a couple days later just to make sure it gets entered into SIS. If you are doing it for credit, you want to see it on your schedule. It won't have a day or time, but it should be on your schedule so that you know that it was inputted correctly. We have noticed some mistakes here and there, so you want to definitely make sure the faculty name is correct and the title of the project's correct, and that it's on there. And if there's any issues, please let us know. Okay, so we're going to take a couple steps back. We're going to talk about how to identify a research advisor. So a couple places that students can go to if they're really not sure who they want to work with. Start with the department that you want to work in. Usually this is the student's own department. So if they're a main student, usually they're looking to work with a main faculty member. But that's not always the case. We do have main students that do research within the biomed department or the ECSE department or computer science, or sometimes even in Haas. So that is possible. But just look at the different options, the different departments, and try to find somebody who's doing research in an area that you're interested in learning about. You can also ask if you have a favorite instructor that you've had or currently in their class. Ask them if they're doing any research, if that's something that you've enjoyed learning about. We have some centers. So within Maine, if you go to the maine.rpi.edu website, we have some centers, research centers. So you can go there and see who's involved in those research centers. Those are based on specific areas within Maine. You can also ask your faculty or your department advisor if you have a specific area of interest and you're not sure who is working in that. We can help you find that person or those people. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes we are asked to advertise for URP positions. So if this is the case, you want to make sure you're checking your RPI email regularly so that you don't miss any of those opportunities. If just remember, you can work in any department, so it doesn't have to be tied to your actual major. If you are doing URP within Maine, and let's say you're a mechanical engineer, you can use URP as one of your technical electives. And that's also true for your one aerospace technical elective for arrows, and for one of your nuclear electives as if you're a nuclear engineer. If you're a dual, then unfortunately the URP for credit won't end up counting towards any of your requirements. But the nice thing about URP for credit is that students typically do very well in the course, and that grade does affect your GPA. So that can be a helpful thing for students. If you're getting paid, just remember that you can't do paid and credit for the same project. So you do have to make sure you talk to your faculty, figure out which option is best for you or is available to you. Sometimes faculty want to work with a student on a credit URP first, and then if they have a good experience with that student, we'll offer them a paid URP position afterwards if that's something the student is interested in. Okay, so how does it work? So if you're going to get it for credit, URP for credit, and this is specific to Maine, you can earn between 1 and 3 credits. So that again equals about 3 hours a week per credit. The number of credit hours earned, that's something you're going to talk to with your faculty member. Think about how you want to use it. Do you want to use it as in a technical elective? Then you might need to do it for 3 credits. If you're just going to be using it for a free elective, you can do any amount. Just remember, eventually you have to end up with 12 free electives. And sometimes students do more than one semester of a URP, so that can add up. So a student could do a 1 credit one semester, a 2 credit the next semester, and that all adds up. If you have any questions, again, and you're a Maine student, you would come to me or Julie Schatz. She works in the office with me as well. Just to answer any questions, we also have a URP checklist available on our Linktree. So make sure you check that out. We have the Linktree link as a QR code outside of our office, and it's also at the bottom of all of my emails. So wherever you're seeing this, if you're seeing this on YouTube, or if you see this because we sent out a link via an email, you should see a link to our Linktree, and that will bring you to our URP checklist. It's updated every semester. Students that want to do it for pay, they can earn between $400 and $3,000 per semester. The base pay is going to be minimum wage, and sometimes faculty can pay more. Again, that's something you're going to work out with them. So the faculty sponsor is responsible for the financial support of the research. That's really, not that important for the student to know, but it is important to know that not every faculty is going to have the budget or be willing to pay for any student. They usually have a more strict screening process for students that are going to get paid. And again, doing it for credit first is a good kind of way to get into URP. So you're going to submit your paperwork to Sue Miller. Her office is at the end of the hall from us in 2049. And if, like I said, if you haven't done any employment paperwork, then you will have to do that as well. All right, so don't forget the timeline. You want to pay attention to this timeline and try not to rush it. So if you get inspired by the idea of research and it's the last day to add a class, it doesn't hurt to start talking to faculty, but at that point, that's a really tight timeline to get everything done on time. So I would say have those conversations in anticipation of doing URP later on at a different semester. You can do URP during Arch, during a summer. That's possible, as long as that's your full-time Arch semester. So if you're a student that just finished their sophomore year, or possibly an early Arch student who just finished their freshman year, and you're here taking a full load of classes, you can do URP for credit during that semester. It is a little confusing because there's something else called SERP, which stands for Summer URP, and that's been around for a lot longer than Arch, and that's program is very specific to a student that would be here just doing URP over the summer and getting paid for that program. It's a paid position. So make sure you're just being careful when you go to the URP website and you're looking at the right option. And just keep in mind that SERP, even though it says summer, it only applies to students who are not doing Arch that summer. And then anything for the academic year also includes summer Arch. So this is what the paperwork will look like. Again, this is updated as of this semester. So for URP for credit, students now, new procedure, which is wonderful, students only have to do the 4UR form, which is a registrar's form. And the form really hasn't changed over the years. So if you find the form on the registrar's website, if you find even an old form, it's pretty much been the same for the last at least 5 years since I've been here. So the form you get, again, you're going to fill this out with the faculty. You won't be able to fill this out on your own, and the faculty will want your input as well. So you're going to fill this out, and then once it's filled out and the faculty has signed it, you're going to submit it to our office, and we will get the department head signature. If you're doing a URP for pay, then there is a URP form that's available on the URP website. And you'll also do work authorization forms, again, if you haven't worked on campus yet. So that's important to know that there's two different processes depending on if you're doing URP for credit or URP for pay. So if you are doing URP for credit or pay within Maine, like I said, we've already said who the URP coordinators are. I am the coordinator for credit, and Sue Miller is the coordinator for pay. But if you're doing URP in any other department on campus, then if you go to the URP website, they have a list of all of the URP coordinators on campus. And sometimes, especially if a student's doing it for pay, this may be somebody in a center, which is not the same as a department. So centers can do paid URPs, but not for credit because they're not, they're not an area that teaches classes. But they can pay students. So, and then there's also, like I said, biomed and ECSE. Those people are also listed so you can find them. If you're going to be doing the URP with a faculty member that is not a Maine faculty member, you want to make sure you know who to turn your forms into because it's not Maine. If you're doing URP for a faculty that only teaches in the biomed department, for example, you're going to submit your forms to the department coordinator for biomed. Sometimes faculty teach in both departments, and in that case, usually the faculty will leave it up to the student. Do they want to earn credit for Maine, or do they want to earn credit for biomed, for example? If that's the case, that's allowed, but again, only if that faculty is actually teaching in both departments. And usually you can tell this by going to the department website, and you'll find that faculty listed on both department websites. The faculty should be able to answer that question, though, if you're not sure. The last very important step is the lab safety. This is an important part that everybody must submit. On one of the forms, it used to say, is this in an experimental lab? I think it was on the older forms. I don't think it says that on the new forms. And if so, then you needed to do the lab safety. Well, everyone now needs to do the lab safety regardless, even if you're doing basically remote work, like you're looking at literature, that sort of thing. Everybody has to do the lab safety. So we have a step-by-step on how to find the lab safety training in Percipio. It's on our URP checklist, and I would encourage students to go to that checklist because it's all there for you step by step. But what you're going to want to do is go to Percipio and do a search for lab safety. Usually it'll pop up. and make sure you complete it, and on the form write what date you finished the lab safety. You only have to do it once, so if you've already done it like in a previous semester, you just have to tell us when you did it and then make sure you print off your certificate, because it should be there in your Percipio where you can easily print it off, and then you submit it with your URP forms. A couple different ways that you can do research that are not URP. URP is a very specific program at RPI for undergraduate research, and that's the program's called URP, but you can still do research in a few different ways. So one way is if you're doing your away semester, you can do research at another institution, kind of similar to doing a co-op. You're going to reach out to that institution and see if they have any opportunities. And if so, then you will fill the information out on the ARCH website for research at another institution. If you're going to do research at RPI for your away semester, again, there's a page on the ARCH website when you choose what you're going to do for your away semester. And one of the parts for this is you're going to have the faculty write a letter of support for your research. And this usually is only possible if you find a faculty is willing to pay you for your research. It doesn't have to be full time, and it doesn't have to be for the full semester, but it does have to be on a somewhat regular basis throughout your away semester. Again, there is the summer URP, the SERP. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, I encourage you to go to the general undergraduate research website available at the info.rpi.edu website. There's a link right there. And there's part of that page dedicated to summer undergraduate research program. And there's more information there. You can also do work study in an academic department or a research center. So this is a way that you can kind of be involved with research, but maybe on a little bit more unofficial basis. So you can kind of see what faculty are doing. You can kind of work side by side with them without actually earning credit, getting paid. So if you have an interest, I mean, you would be getting paid if you're doing work study, but not specifically for your research. It would be more for clerical things, running things around campus, doing that sort of thing. Sometimes students will get offered a research assistant position. This is, again, going to be a little different than a URP. And usually this is for a student that's not here during a full-time semester. So, for example, during a summer, a student that's not doing SERP, but a faculty really wants to hire a student, sometimes they can hire them as a research assistant. Students can also do independent study. And a lot of times students will ask, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between URP and an independent study? And it's a great question because there's definitely a gray area where some experiences could count for either of these things. But typically, what I usually explain to students is if the experience that you're coming up with the faculty is more like a job, then you're going to lean towards a URP. And again, that could be confusing because, paid versus credit. And when we're making this distinction, if we're talking URP versus independent study, if it's like a job, URP for credit and pay is kind of the same. Okay. So that would lean more URP if it's more like a job. And then if it's more like a class, that would be more of an independent study. Okay. Usually faculty will tell you what makes most sense. And it's usually based on, are you going to be doing something that's going to contribute to a larger research project? Are you going to be doing a lot of work, but not necessarily, learning new things as the sole reason that you're doing this? Then, one is, the independent studies more like learning new things, and URP is doing work. So hopefully that helps. Again, you can see where there's a lot of gray area in the middle. While you're doing research, you're learning. So that's where it gets kind of complicated. But when in doubt, you can ask me or you can ask the faculty. And then sometimes, we can just talk about what the difference would be. And sometimes you just pick whatever works best for you. You get to choose the title, whether it's independent study or research. So it will show up on your transcript for either option for whatever title you and your faculty come up with. So it'll be just like another class on your transcript, but the code will either be 2940 for an independent study or 4940 for a 4,000 level independent study. And if it's a URP, it'll be 2941 or 4941 for a 4,000 level. Students sometimes ask what the difference is between a 2,000 and a 4,000. And for that, I really have to encourage students to talk to the faculty about what is the most appropriate for the type of experience the student's going to get. Is it something that a freshman would be able to handle? Then that's probably more of a 2,000. If it's more later sophomore, junior, senior experience needed, then that's going to be more of a 4,000. So I think that pretty much sums up. If you guys have any questions, you can reach out to me. My email is stockk@rpi.edu. I will try to add that in on this YouTube video on a comment below. And hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you soon. Bye.